Uh, what happened during COVID was I was living in a very rural area. Uh, I was away. I thought I was free. I had a lot of friends, good friends that were uh, freedom lovers of all stripes, who were also very independent, creative people. Yet during COVID, we found out that we were not free at all. That there were even roadblocks and restrictions where we were, and everybody got crazy. And then the idea grew out. Like the only place that wasn't crazy where I was living was a religious community that was nearby. It's a strange blend of Christianity and Buddhism they were following. They were nice people. I didn't care much for the religion, but they were nice people. So I knew these people. Some of them were friends, and they had a community. They had their own area with about 60 people living there. They had their own shop, their own school, their own restaurant, and their life continued as normal.
Mm.
And I thought, hey, that's, if you have something like this, um, or a war or something, and whatever, if you have a real crisis, the only thing that really works is if you actually live with the people who have your back. And uh, I wrote about this. I also wrote about the Zetas in Honduras, why I thought they were wrong location because they're far away from population centers. I mean, you couldn't fly, right? During COVID, you couldn't fly there. So and then some other problems with those sites is that they're too expensive, and therefore they're not available for young people or for your average young person, young rich person, something else. But if you have to pay at least 100,000 to live there, and then you need a boat, and you need 3 flights away uh, from where you are, and where you most likely can have a job is where you came from and not there. So all these kind of practical concerns. I wrote an article about it, and I wrote, well, you need a place where the people are living. I mean, the people you're looking for, say, if you're in Europe, you need to be in Europe. If you're in the US, you need to be in the US. Well, the US already got their free safe project. I don't know anybody really. I mean, I know a lot of Americans, but I don't have any family or friends or any good reason to be in the US. So my focus is Europe.
Mhm.
Um, and so you need to be in Europe. You need to be in a location that you can drive to, because we've seen during COVID, if you can't fly um, there, then you have a problem. If you can drive to a location, or if it's really borders closed, you could still walking or hitchhiking or get there some way or another. But if it's overland, you can get there. Um, so that was a prerequisite. You got to be able to drive there within 2 days. Um, Another prerequisite I wrote is got to be affordable. If you want a real community, it's got to be cheap so that young people can join too, the youngest possible. If you're straight out of college or high school, you have no money, but you want something, you want a house, you want a place to live. It's got to be accessible. Um, so that was the second requirement. 15,000 euros or less. I made was a bit of an arbitrary number, but thought that's a reasonable number. Eventually, for an entry into the community, so to say, it doesn't mean that you get a full house for that. What we have right now is we found a place with ruins, and some of these ruins are only the walls are still standing, but you can have them for free. Um, and make them into a house. You can put an old caravan there. So we're well within the 15,000 range. I'd say we're within 5,000 euros, because if you can buy an old caravan for less than 1,000, drive it there. You got accommodation. You got more than most people. Um, and the another requirement is that it had to have an appealing climate for most of Europe. Because if you go up north in Scandinavia, there's land, there's space, but it's very cold. And it's hard to attract people to a place colder than where they are from. So Yeah, I said we got to look south. We got to look south, not north. We got to look south. And then there were other factors that I took into consideration of lesser importance, municipal size being one, because the authorities that you deal with most, that have the biggest influence on your life, are not in the capital. They're not in Brussels. They're in your own municipality. They're your neighbors, and so if your municipality is very small, then you have personal interaction. Whereas if your municipality gets big, over 10,000 people, it becomes bureaucrats. You don't know them, and they don't have any personal interest in you. They can screw your life, and you don't have anything. You can't do anything really about it. Whereas if it's a very small municipality, which is the case where in our location, it's the case in France, it's the case in Spain. Um, I don't know so much other countries, Europe. I know it wasn't the case in Portugal. They have big municipalities. And I know it wasn't the case in the Netherlands. They joined smaller municipalities into huge, yeah. So the big palaces and civil workers, and so in the small municipality where we are, the people working at the municipality are sometimes literally our neighbors. We know them; they know us. If they're very, very mean to us, we can be very mean to them. So since people tend to be nice or nice enough in personal interactions, I believe on a small scale everybody is a libertarian. On a small scale, we don't try to steal from each other, and at least not in this part of the world. There are some areas maybe where people do that, but not here. On a small scale, people are nice enough to each other to avoid conflict. So yeah, small municipalities was a prerequisite as well. So eventually we settled on Galicia and Spain because of, oh, sorry, I forgot the most important one, actually. Abandoned